like my school. I like anything. I like my dad. I like my cousins. I like my aunts. I like my Allisons. I like my moms. I like my sisters. I like my dad. I like my hair. I like my haircuts. I like my pajamas. I like my stuff. I like my rooms. I like my whole house. My whole house is great. I can do anything good. Yeah. I can do anything good. Better than anyone. Better than anyone.
That's little Jessica. Isn't she fantastic? I need her in the morning, you know. Jessica, could you just talk to me for a little bit? We'll get back to that in a little bit. We're at the end of our Life Apps series, and 5 actions that Scripture gives us, 5 principles we're commanded to do. And remember, they were forgive and confess our sin, to find rest. We all like the rest one better. We're still kind of moving in that rest thing. Last week we had trust, and this week we've got encourage. And these are all relational. You know, there's not just a vertical thing where God tells us something, but it's about how we deal with other people. And God moves, of course, always in the midst of relationship. So today we have encourage, and what a word that is. The English word here, encourage. Do you ever see the courage in the midst of that? You know, and did you see that courage is the ability to face the future, to face danger, to face difficulties, and to encourage someone else is to give them courage. Did you ever think of that? When someone encourages you, they're giving you the ability, they're giving you the faith to face the future. Now, we live, of course, in a culture where we receive a lot more criticism than what we do encouragement. I mean, that's just the way it is. A few weeks ago, I had an interaction with a customer no service, as we often call them, with a credit card that the church has. And I'd been, I was going to say fighting. That's not right. I shouldn't say that. I had been having discussions with this credit card company for months, and they had not done what they said that they were going to do. They were going to send me this statement that someone had stolen, evidently, out of my file because it was missing. But anyway, they were supposed to send this statement to me, and they didn't do it. So I called them up, and when I called them up, man, I had this, I had my tough guy attitude ready. I was going to tell them how it was and what they had done, and, I was just expecting the worst. I got this sweetest lady, and her name was Jessica. Maybe, we've had a lot of Jessicas here. Maybe Jessica just means you're a sweet person. I don't know, Jessica. But it was another Jessica, just like our one in the movie. And she was the nicest person, and I told her the predicament. I needed this to reconcile the books, and if we didn't get the books reconciled, the church was going to look at us and think that we were really stupid and we'd stolen money or something. I don't know. But anyway, she says, well, all I know that I can do, because if I ask them to send this to you again, you won't get it in time. And all I know what to do is I could go through your statement and I could read to you every purchase and who it was to and what date it was. And I said, you would do that? She goes, sure. If that helps you out, I'll do that. So that's what she did. For 5 minutes, she read to me everything that was on this credit card statement. And I got done with it, and I said, you are really unbelievable. You are I've never had a person like you. And would you send me your email survey so I can put your name down so your supervisor knows what a great job you were doing? Because I was really down on this credit card company, and you have changed that. And as a matter of fact, you have made my day. And I told 2 or 3 people about it. I said, you know what happened to me today? I got this lady at the credit card company, and she was so good, And it's like, wow, it just with a little bit of love and grace, and she just changed everything. It's very rare, isn't it? Studies show that in business, the ratio between complaints and compliments is 10 to 1. 10 to 1 in the workplace. And it isn't much better in personal relationship. Gottman Institute said that for every one encouraging comment we receive, there are 6 comments that are negative. 1 to 6. in our relationships. And think about that imbalance. You know, that somebody says something nice to us, 6 more comments will be made to us in our relationships that are negative. Wow. This explains why sometimes our workplaces are, not very productive. And it also explains sometimes why our relationships and marriages and families struggle as well. And in our marriage relationships and our parenting and all of our close relationships, we're strongly influenced by the critical agenda that's in our world. And we may find ourselves, much better at pointing out the faults. I'm an expert at that. You ask me what's wrong with something, I can detail it for you what's wrong with something. Some of us just have that gift, don't we? We can just naturally tell people what's wrong. But we may find it difficult and kind of unnatural to say nice things and to be encouraging. In fact, many, even mature Christians think that the way to motivate somebody is you keep raising the bar. If they do something well, then you just raise it up a little bit further. You keep, because we don't want them to be satisfied with who they are. So we just have to keep making it more and more difficult for them to get that word of encouragement. Especially in sports teams. Some of you have got little kids in sports teams. You know what that is. And they go, man, that was a good hit, but. Okay, that's a good catch, but. And we think that that's how to motivate people. What if God did that to us? Let's think about this week. What if God said to us, you almost have my love, but there's just this one character thing about you, If you would work on this, and so then we work on it really, really hard, and God says, hey, you're almost there, but I noticed while you were working on that, I noticed something else. And if you could just perfect this part of your life, you see, then I would love you. But until you do, I'm not, what if God just kept raising the bar? Some people see Christianity that way. They really do. They see walking with God that way, that He is always raising the bar for us to try to motivate us. And it just isn't that way. I'm going to look at a few scriptures on this, a biblical foundation. The first one is 1 Thessalonians 5:11. Had this as a verse one time in a church that I was pastor at for the whole year. We read it every time we opened up a meeting. Therefore, encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing. What if all of our church organizations function like that? Encourage each other. Build each other up. What a great place it'd be to hang. I'd like to think that here at the gathering we do that a lot. There's not a lot of criticism here, but just think about that. If every thing that you went to was like, man, I went and I wasn't feeling real good, but boy, by the time I walked out, I just thought I was really okay. I got courage. What if, Paul says this is the model of what it means to be in fellowship, to encourage each other, build each other up. Later in Thessalonians, just 3 verses on, 1 Thessalonians 5:14, he says, encourage the timid. Another word there is the fearful. So people that are fearful, what the world does is they jump on them, But he says what the church is supposed to do is if someone is afraid, you encourage him. You give him some courage. Paul talks to the Ephesians in 4:29, and he goes a little bit deeper. He says, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. So he points out the contrast. No unwholesome talk. Now, a lot of times in churches they think, oh, that no unwholesome talk, that's a dirty story. That's not what he's talking about here. Unwholesome talk, he's talking about things that tear other people down, point out their problems. And, the ratio of criticism to encouragement is 6-1 in the world, but in the church it should be 0 to 500 billion gazillion, as the kids say. That should be the ratio in the church, to overcome the world with our ability to bring out the best in people, to bring out, break the old habits of criticism. God says, bless them, encourage them, Build them up. Do it the way I do it. Oh, man. I mean, I need this we need this so much, don't we? Doesn't every person need this? Every person needs encouragement. Truett Cathy, who was the founder and former CEO of Chick-fil-A, said that there's one universal sign that you can tell if a person needs encouragement. He said this is in every language, in every country. One sign can tell you whether a person needs encouragement or not. They're breathing. And Truett Cathy, you read his whole story, that was his whole leadership model. He would encourage his people that worked for him. That was how he led people and brought out the best in them. And then Hebrews 3:13. The writer says, encourage one another daily, as long as it's called today, so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. There's the antidote for sin. Encourage each other daily. Not occasionally, but daily. Now, to follow these biblical principles, we have to, I think, become more intentional. That's what I received this week, was that, you do that occasionally, Don, but you need to be more intentional about being encouraging to people. Of course, we have to actually think before we speak. That's new for some of us, and we need to do this in every relationship that we have. And I want us to look really at three spheres of relationships, three separate circles. The first one is what we'd call the circle of life. These are just casual relationships that we have. This is like the Jessica that was on the credit card call. Okay, this is the server at the restaurant. This is the young man that is your attendant as he cleans out your car, or, somebody that you just meet for a few minutes, and perhaps they're doing a menial job. I don't know. But just casual relationships is just life. What words do we use when we encounter people like that? You realize that if you're serving the public, and the public gives 6-to-1 criticism over compliment, man, if you're meeting a lot of people, it can get rough during the day. I mean, it can really load you up. And so here's our first sphere of life. And so many people get beat down by life, and when they go to work and then they hear negative comments, and maybe that's 10-to-1, or maybe they meet the public and the public is just kind of treats you like you're, not even a human being. But what if we purposely, intentionally, when someone is waiting on us at the table and he says, welcome, how are things going, which is a standard greeting, and we sit, instead of going, fine, instead of saying that, if we look back at him and said, I'm having a pretty good day. How's your day been? What's going on with you? What if we realized that they were human beings and then paid them compliments for things that they do? I mean, it has the potential of changing the world. It really does. If we would just, in our casual relationships do this. Then there are relationships where we go a little bit deeper. We might call this the circle of influence. These are people that we work with, peers, leaders, employees, as well as people that we serve with, maybe in the church or the community. And these are the teachers and the coaches. We see them more than just a casual, but we spend some time with them. And this might be the circle where we can make the biggest influence. Too often, we are just, especially at work, focused on our job. We forget to look around and see how other people are doing. And when our ratio of complaints, as they said, is 10-to-1 in business, many people just need to hear a positive comment from somebody. They're just desperate for a positive comment. So if you're a boss or a supervisor at work, and one of the questions that you should be asking as you lead is not just what are you doing, but how are you doing? See, it's not just about performance, but it's about the purpose. And we could spin out some statistics here that show that the companies that do that take care of people, do much better. They're much, much more productive than companies that just look as people to be things that produce. So, that's just a different way of looking at that. John Trent, in a book that he wrote years ago called Choose to Live the Blessing, told a story about a teacher, and the teacher was actually a Catholic sister in a Catholic school. And let me read just part of this, what she talks about. She talks about this young man and how his class had worked really hard all week, and so by Friday they were kind of done with their work assignment, and she didn't have anything to do, so she said, okay, I want everybody to take out a piece of paper, and I want you to write something nice about every person in the class. Just one thing nice about every other student in the class. And so it was kind of a time filler. It wasn't really, she thought that important. The students did that, and she took it home, and she compiled the results, and then on Monday she gave each person what other people had said about them in the class. And John Trent goes on to tell the story that several years later, one of those young men named Mark was killed in Vietnam, and after the funeral, the classmates, a lot of them, and the teacher were with Mark's family, and they were eating lunch together. And Mark's dad took a wallet out of his pocket, and he said they found this on Mark when he was killed, and he carefully removed a refolded, you know where I'm going with this, don't you? Yeah. And tattered paper, and it was that list that he was given when way back there in grade school, that he'd been carrying that with him all the way to Nam. And one of the other kids there named Charlie, he kind of smiled and he said, I keep my list in the desk drawer. And Chuck's wife said, well, Chuck put his in our wedding album. And Marilyn says, I have mine too. It's in my diary. And then Vicki reached into her pocket and she brought out her frazzled list that she carries with her every day. Nice little story, isn't it? True story. It could be our story if somebody gave us a list of what was the best thing about us. Remarkable what an encouraging word can do. So in our circle of influence, God gives us the power to give courage to other people. And then there's this inner circle, our relationships, and that would include spouses and children and siblings and parents and close friends is the last circle. Our words here carry so much weight, and this is where the most words are spoken, and this is where we need to be the most careful. And that's, as we know, not always the case. So let's take a moment. I want us just to think about just a few general things here in this area in our relationships. And first of all, I want to say something to women about men. And you may know this, you may not know this, but do you know, ladies, what the men in your inner circle, you know what they're asking themselves all the time? They may never admit to this. Don't hate me, guys, for telling them this, but guys, just turn your ears off for a while. But what the guys are asking themselves over and over since they were little boys in every area of life is, do I have what it takes? Do I have what it takes to be on this team? Do I have what it takes to be in this class? Do I have what it takes to date her? Do I have what it takes to get this job? Over and over, we're asking ourselves every day, am I enough? Do I have what it takes? Guys, I know I'm going really deep for you. You're kind of staring out into space here. But just kind of nod. You just come on, don't ruin the sermon for me, you know. But we really do. We ask ourselves a lot, do I have what it takes? And then we live in some environments where we're told over and over again, you don't have enough. You are not good enough. You need to try harder. You need to sell more, do more, rise up, because you see our sales are down. And it's all about you. You're the problem. And if you would do more. And then, you know, ladies, I know that this doesn't happen in your families, but we come home from work, and then if there's any insinuation whatsoever that we're not measuring up here, wow, that's why he went off. Right. It's because we've been asking ourselves that question all day. Am I good enough? How do I measuring up? And then we come home and something is said, and it's not intentional, but you think, I'm not measuring up here either. See? Now, enough on the ladies. Guys, let me talk to you about your wives, okay? Or just women in general. You know what women ask? They kind of ask the same thing, really. Yeah, how am I doing? Am I enough? Only there's another dimension that's thrown in here. The other dimension that guys really don't care that much about, and that shows on us, is that women are asking the question, am I pretty? Am I attractive enough? See, because our culture puts that on you so heavy. Are you pretty enough? And they're asking some of the same questions about performance at work and in relationships, but then they've got this other one that's added in there. And so, it's important, and, as guys, we don't think about this, but it's really important that we give them the messages and the encouragement that lets them know that, yes, they are beautiful enough. They are certainly beautiful enough. They do not need to be any more beautiful than what they are. That they measure up to our expectations 100,000 gazillion million %. See? And, the facts here, 1 out of 10 girls have an eating disorder. It goes deeper than that. 40% of the girls 9 and 10 years old have already dieted. 53% of American girls are unhappy with their bodies. This is an epidemic. And it's been building and building, and no matter what Dove does, it's not getting any better quicker. And we have to be aware of that. And then as parents, while the average ratio of criticism among relationships is 6-to-1, when it comes to parenting and children, it's 8-to-1. We do this without even being aware of it, that, and I'm not talking about, giving up discipline your kids, of course. But we have to watch what we're doing here, that we don't make them think that they don't measure up, that we have to purposely, intentionally encourage. So think about some of the conversations that you have with your child. Now, here's what's really sad. Do you know where we get this ratio right, where it's the other way? It's like 10-to-1. The only time that I know of where we get this ratio right is at a funeral. I'm going to a funeral home this evening for a friend that passed away down in Danville. And as we're there at that funeral home, nobody will say, well, he could have been more loving. Nobody would have said, well, he wasn't very nice to me. You know what everybody's going to say? They're going to say, what a great guy. What a great guy he was. Or they'll be silent. Now, I've been to some funerals that were pretty silent. And this guy wasn't a very nice guy, really. But most of the time at the funeral homes, we say what we really want to say, right? We say, I don't know what I'm going to do without him. I'm going to miss her so much. And we do it at the funeral. Some of you might be aware of Mitch Albom, 5 People That You Meet in Heaven, or his first book was Tuesdays with Maury. And he told this story. This really touched me. A story about his Uncle Eddie. And Uncle Eddie was his hero, And some people have uncles and aunts that are just like, they just get it. They goof with you, and all the other adults are going, do this, don't do that. And there's this one uncle or aunt, and they're just great. And that's the way his Uncle Eddie was. But he says that he was his hero when he was a kid, because Uncle Eddie was really cool. But then as he got older, then he realized that Uncle Eddie didn't quite achieve the things in life that he wanted to achieve. And he kind of became that guy that was just kind of waiting, just kind of treading water in life. And Mitch goes on and tells it like this. He says, I became a man who traveled. I achieved success as a sports writer. I made friends in many places. I felt almost embarrassed that so much opportunity had come my way, while Eddie slogged through his days with a quiet resignation. He, of course, felt differently, typical of relatives who truly love you. He held no envy of my achievements, only joy. Then he says, at his funeral, I delivered the eulogy. I broke down halfway through and started crying uncontrollably. It was sadness, yes, but also regret. I had never said those loving things to his face. Isn't that so true of us? We all have these people in our lives, and gosh, we'd like to encourage them if we just stop and think about it. But we don't think about it. And, we think someday, someday I'll do that, but it's never today. And that's one of the huge problems with this, is that we consider encouragement to be a nice thing. We don't consider it to be an urgent thing. It may be much more urgent than what we know that it is, but we think, well, yeah, that's good. We should all do that more tomorrow and the next day. See? Now, let me leave you on a good note here. Encouragement is a win-win thing. One of the consequences of encouraging other people that will make you want to do it more is that you yourself get encouraged when you encourage someone else. This isn't a promise from God. This is a principle. We would call it, this kind of goes with that principle. Let me use a big word here. I can't spell it. Reciprocity. You sow what you reap. The world says it'll come back to you. They call it karma. Nah, God says it's a principle that what you give is what you're going to receive. And it's the same way here with encouragement. If you give encouragement to other people, you yourselves will be encouraged. Proverbs 11:25. A generous man will prosper. He who refreshes others will himself be refreshed. The translations say, he who encourages others will be encouraged. Some say, he who builds others up will himself be built up. You see, this life app of encouragement just isn't for others, it's for us too. When we apply it, we will be encouraged. It's hard to imagine how something that seems so small can be so huge to be commanded by God. And yet when you consider the implications, the ripple effect, the ramifications of one person, of Jessica on encouraging me and me encouraging her back, and then I went on and encouraged somebody else that day, and she did too, and somebody else encouraged someone else, and the next thing you know, we have this movement of encouragement that goes on, see? And you think, well, it's just a small little thing. God says it's important. If you encourage, others will be encouraged as well. Now, I want to show you another little short clip of Jessica, little Jessica. This one happened years before what you saw her standing on her vanity. Okay, I hope you like this as much as I do. I think it's really neat.
Wow. I like his fingers.
You like her fingers?
Wow, he's good. He had one too.
Wow. That's your little sister, Vanessa. I don't know how that story turns out. I bet little Vanessa's an encourager too. Don't you? How could she help but not be? Grow up with a little sister that tells you, you're okay, you're fine. Well, there we are. When we started this series, remember, we started off with learning that we should not just be hearers of the words, but doers of the words, because application is everything. It's not just enough to hear it. We've got to do it. And we've gone through these. Remember, forgiveness, forgiven people forgive, and confession. True confession brings true change and rest, to live at a sustainable pace. If we live at a sustainable place, we will get to a better place. Remember then, and trust was last week, and that was that love bends. We cut some people some grace in order to create an environment of trust. And today is when we encourage others, we are encouraged. I'm going to end there. Bless you, folks. Amen.
who are thirsty, all who are weak, come to the fountain. Dip your heart in the streams of life. Let the pain and the sorrow be washed away in the waves of His mercy, as deep cries out.